Joey has long been a shadow in Fairmont Crest, a wise, ruthless man with an irresistible charm. With his elegant appearance and charming indifference, he always knows how to make fragile women fall into his dangerous vortex. Vanessa was not a weak person. She used to be proud, used to know how to keep her position and honor, but since meeting Joey, everything inside her seemed to be broken little by little. He didn't need to say too much, just a look, a vague encouragement. Vanessa felt herself being sucked into a deep hole, both scared and longing. And then the fateful moment came, when Joey made a proposal that stunned both her mind and heart. A seemingly romantic proposal, but inside was hidden a web of danger. Vanessa heard that proposal and her heart trembled, not because of pure love, but because of a mixture of desire and obsession. Joey's proposal was unlike anything she had ever expected. It wasn't simply a man wanting to tie himself to a woman. It was a golden chain, both shiny and cold, tying her to his evil plans. Joey wanted a wife not just for show, but to legitimize his money-laundering schemes, to use Vanessa's image as a cover for the underground political power he was building. She wasn't love, she was a pawn, a tool chosen because he had seen through her weakness. The scariest thing was that Vanessa knew it, but her reason was always bent by Joey's eyes. She wondered if she was being too blind, or just looking for an escape from her cold marriage with Doug. Doug, the man behind her for years, always stable, always sure, but lacking the charm, lacking the black hole that both frightened and prevented her from leaving. Joey was different. He made her feel alive, made her gasp, made her feel valuable in a twisted way. And so, that proposal, though dangerous, though tinged with darkness, still crept into her heart like an irresistible temptation. She stood at a crossroads. Accepting the proposal meant entering a world with no way out. Once she became Joey's wife, she would no longer be a free Vanessa, but a Vanessa tied to a web of sin and power. But if she refused, would she still have a chance to escape the obsession that had gripped her mind? She knew clearly, once she had tasted the flavor that Joey brought, she would never be able to return to the peaceful days with Doug. What was more terrifying was the prospect of Doug knowing the truth, the husband she had betrayed in her mind. If one day he discovered his wife was on the verge of becoming another man's wife, his reaction would not stop at pain. Doug is patient but not stupid. Years of pent-up anger, combined with the humiliation of betrayal, could turn him into a completely different person. Doug would lose not only love, but also self-respect, and that would push him down a dangerous path, even leading to an irreversible tragedy. Joey understands that. He knows that his presence will destroy the family life Vanessa has tried so hard to preserve. It is that ruthlessness that makes the proposal a power play. For him, this is not just an emotional move, but a way to destroy Doug, to bind Vanessa to the point of no return. Once she accepts, there will be no other choice but to stand by him, to go deeper with him into the underworld, where everything is decided not by love, but by power, money, and fear. Vanessa may have a vague idea that this proposal is the gateway to hell, but she is driven by the desire to be at the center of that chaotic world. Her weakness and desire for recognition have made her the perfect prey. Meanwhile, Doug has no idea that tragedy is slowly forming right next to him. When the truth is revealed, it may not only be a broken marriage, but also the collapse of a system of trust, honor, and the safety of many people in Fairmont Crest. Joey has planted a dangerous seed, and now Vanessa is the most fertile soil for it to germinate. The remaining question is not whether she will agree, but when she will completely lose herself in that vortex of corruption, and how terrible the price will be for that choice. Doug was a man who rarely showed anger, a man who had been seen as a solid foundation for Vanessa and her family, but since Joey entered his life, everything he believed in began to crumble piece by piece. At first, it was just rumors of gambling, shady real estate deals. then whispers that Joey was using Vanessa's company as a cover to launder money. Doug had deliberately ignored it, thinking that if he did not touch the wound, it would heal itself, but everything changed when he witnessed his wife in the arms of her enemy. That moment burned all of Doug's self-respect and patience, turning him from a betrayed husband into a man who was brewing a bloodthirsty revenge. Doug knew that Joey was not just a womanizer. He was a systematic manipulator, a fox in the underworld, who knew how to turn lust and money into weapons. He lured Vanessa not only with sweet words, but also with the attraction of dark power. He lured Randy into his network to expand the network, and Doug knew that if he let one slip, he would destroy not only his honor but also the existence of his family. Therefore, Doug decided not to just sit still. He planned revenge, a plan so dark that even he shuddered when thinking about it.in the fateful episode. Doug tracked Joey down at the underground casino where he manipulated all the gamblers like puppets. There, Doug found evidence of huge sums of money being transferred through shell companies, including a real estate business named Vanessa. He realized that Joey not only wanted to win his wife's heart, but also wanted to use her as a legal shield to clean up the dirty money. Each step of the investigation was a knife cutting deep into the already broken trust. Doug was faced with two paths. One was to surrender everything to the law. The other was to kill his enemy with his hands trembling with hatred. If he chose the legal path, Doug would have to face the naked truth. Vanessa could be dragged into legal trouble, and her reputation would be torn apart in the media. That was what made him hesitate, because he still loved her, even though that love was being eroded by betrayal. But if he chose to take Joey down himself, it would be like stepping into a deep abyss. Joey was dangerous, had connections in the dark, and any action Doug took could result in his being murdered or being caught up in legal proceedings. In a fit of rage, Doug began to plot his personal revenge. He watched Joey, learned his every habit, his every weakness, and waited for the right moment to strike. Every night, when he saw Vanessa with her empty eyes, he became more determined to make Joey pay. But what could that payback be? A cold death in the dark, or a total collapse before the light of the law? Doug couldn't choose yet, but he knew, once he started, there was no turning back. The consequences of Doug's failure were the most terrifying thing. He could become a hunted man, not only by Joey but also by the legal system he once trusted. If Joey discovers this plan, he will not hesitate to use Vanessa as a hostage to break Doug once more. And worse, if Vanessa, in a trance due to Joey's charm, betrays her husband, Doug will lose everything: love, honor, and even his life. Joey is still at large, like a predator knowing his prey will fall into his trap. He pushes Vanessa deeper into his arms, showing Doug that this marriage is nothing more than a farce. But that contempt may be a blind spot that makes him underestimate the person stalking him. Doug is no longer the gentle husband. He is turned into his most dangerous enemy, willing to do anything to destroy Joey. The big question hanging in the air is, will Doug choose to become a cold-blooded avenger, bringing Joey to light with undeniable evidence, or will he turn into a murderer in a rage to protect what remains of himself? Both paths were filled with blood and tragedy, and once the wheel of fate began to turn, none of them, not Joey, not Vanessa, and not Doug, could escape the tragedy that awaited them. Vanessa was still reeling from Joey's powerful proposal, which was like a double-edged sword. In that moment, she felt both cherished and imprisoned, an irresistible temptation and an inescapable bondage. Joey knew she was in a weak, disoriented state, and he had chosen the perfect moment to tie the golden chain around her neck. But while Vanessa was still struggling with her inner turmoil, Doug was on another path, a path of hatred that was being nurtured every day. He didn't know that his wife had just accepted the proposal, but just by witnessing Vanessa's longing gaze towards Joey, he could feel that his marriage was being dragged into the abyss. And in the pain of betrayal, Doug chose the path of revenge, determined to make Joey pay. Doug began to follow Joey, every step, every meeting, and discovered more and more dirty truths. He was not just a spoiled playboy. He was the center of a money laundering network, using high-end real estate companies as a cover. Doug also found evidence that Joey had manipulated Randy, turning him into a pawn in the scheme. Everything was connected, turning Doug into a bloodthirsty man, no longer simply wanting to keep his wife, but wanting to destroy the entire dark empire that Joey was building. But what made Doug explode the most was when he saw Vanessa in Joey's arms, an image that made his whole world collapse. At that moment, Doug no longer just wanted to bring him to justice, he wanted to kill his enemy with his own hands. Vanessa was now trapped in a maze of weakness and obsession. She knew that Joey was using her as a tool, an important piece in the chessboard of power, but his charm was like a drug, making it impossible for her to escape. That proposal, which was actually just a link to legitimize the money laundering scheme and infiltrate deeper into the upper class of Fairmont Crest, made her vaguely believe that she was desired, that she was appreciated. She thought she was standing at the center, but in fact she was just crawling into the luxurious cage that Joey had built. The more she was with him, the further she was from Doug, the more she became a delicious prey for the predators in the dark. Joey, as usual, was cold and heartless. He saw Doug as a troublesome burden, a lamb trying to appear dangerous. But that contempt could turn out to be a fatal mistake. Doug was no longer a weak husband. He had turned into another predator, willing to give up everything to defeat his opponent. He begins spreading rumors about Joey's business dealings, applying pressure from the law, and trying to break the chains in his network. While Joey is busy manipulating Vanessa, Doug sets traps that shake the underground empire. However, things don't stop there. Randy, who was once manipulated by Joey, now becomes an unstable factor. He harbors resentment for being used, and when Doug approaches, Randy begins to waver. But once Randy betrays, Joey will not hesitate to eliminate him. Vanessa, caught between her guilty love for Joey and the threat of being destroyed by the underground conspiracy, begins to panic. She realizes that if she continues, she will not only lose Doug, but may lose everything: her reputation, her freedom, and her life. Doug is pushed to the wall, facing the ultimate choice. Should he hand over all the evidence to the police, accept that Vanessa may be dragged into legal trouble, or will he end the war in the dark? One wrong move could cost him not only his wife, but his freedom and his life. Joey is still arrogant, believing he has everything under control, but he has no idea that Doug has prepared a fatal blow. Vanessa is completely torn between two men. One is a pervert who has made her lose her mind. The other is a husband who is turning into a vengeful ghost. In this maelstrom of madness, each character is pushed to the limit. Vanessa falls into a state of extreme fear, which can lead to unexpected actions, even betraying both to save herself. Doug is sinking deeper and deeper into hatred, just one step away from crossing the line of the law. Joey is blindly confident, not realizing that his arrogance is paving the way for his downfall. All three are bound in a deadly triangle, where each wrong decision can lead to an irreversible tragedy. The story at Fairmont Crest is no longer about everyday intrigue, but has become a battle for survival. Who will win, who will lose, and at what cost? Doug may have turned Joey into a loser, but in the process, will he turn himself into the monster he once hated? And Vanessa, will she realize the truth before it's too late? Or will she continue to sink into her obsession, only to one day realize she's just a pawn in someone else's hands?